could you just maybe briefly summarize some of these views, or like when you're thinking about these are the primary arguments for theism or for Christianity, and explain them if you wouldn't mind?
Sure, I'll give you what I think is by far the best one right now. So this is for theism. This is argument, not for Christianity specifically. I'll get to that, or you might have to remind me, but I'll get to it. Yeah. And so this is called the argument from fine tuning. It's a design argument. There's a little bit of science here, so if I don't explain it well, ask me. Okay, but I think this is something. Do you know by name, like the fine tuning argument? Have you ever heard that name?
Yeah, I have heard of it. I think I've seen some different YouTube philosophers talk about it. But yeah.
I think every pastor should know about this one because I think it's really quite powerful. So the idea is this is a fairly recent discovery in physics. We always knew that if the laws of nature were different, like things would be different. So if gravity were like a little bit stronger, then things like giraffes probably wouldn't exist, right? It's just too hard for blood to go from a mammalian heart to go all the way up to the brain of a giraffe. Right now, it's kind of on the edge, right? Of what's possible. So we always knew that. Change the laws, things are different. What we discovered about 40 years ago, and we keep seeing more examples of this, is that certain things about the laws, if you change them ever so slightly, so there's four, like for example, there are four fundamental forces in the universe. So gravity is familiar, electromagnetism is familiar, and there's a couple that are called the weak and strong forces, nuclear forces, which are less familiar. Those are considered to be the four fundamental forces in the universe, and they all have constants in them. So if you've ever seen like Newton's law for gravity, it's F for force equals G, it's a number, M1, M2 over R squared. It's the strength of gravity between two masses. It depends on how far apart they are from one another. But that G that I mentioned, it's just a number. It's a constant. It's the gravitational constant. So all these force laws have these numbers that they're just numbers, but they got to be in there, and you have to figure out what they are experimentally to make the equations work. Well, it turns out that for all of these constants, at least with the forces, and there's about 25 examples of what I'm going to describe, if you change them ever so slightly, life itself would be impossible anywhere in the universe. So if you think like your old style radio where you had to tune in just to get exactly precise to get the station that you wanted to listen to. If your younger listeners don't know what radios are anymore, but you once had to turn a knob, right? Or even like on your smartphone, there's like maybe 10 settings for volume, up and down. Mm-hmm. It turns out for life to be possible, you can think of them kind of as dials, like these constants, like they're kind of like dials. And so if you crank the dial up a little bit, it turns out, life is impossible. You turn the dial down a little bit, life is impossible. I'm not talking about life on Earth. I'm talking about life anywhere in the universe. So just for example, like the electromagnetic force. Okay. So this is what, negative charges are like charges repel each other, opposite charges attract each other. Mm-hmm. And this is what's responsible for, say, holding why it is that electrons stay attracted inside an atom, that the nucleus is positively charged, electrons are negatively charged, they attract each other. It holds them together. It turns out if the electromagnetic force were slightly weaker, we wouldn't have the bigger atoms wouldn't work. Electrons would go zipping off into space. So atoms themselves would collapse. They wouldn't be stable. That's really bad. Right? So we need atoms. We need stable atoms. If the electromagnetic force were slightly stronger, then now we go to chemistry. Then it would be difficult for atoms to share electrons, to form bonds in chemistry. The major form of bonding. Atoms need to share electrons. Okay, so it's kind of in between. It can't be the strength can't be too strong that atoms can't share electrons, and it can't be too weak, otherwise electrons just go zipping off. And it turns out that it's in this really super narrow range, so narrow that if this would just happen by chance, if by chance when the Big Bang spits out the material universe and the values for these constants get formed, if it's just random, like how random is it? it turns out you would have for many of the examples, you would have a better chance of winning the lotto. What's the big lotto? Like Powerball? Winning it, and they do it like once a week. I don't know, but you would have a better chance of winning it like every week of your life than for this to happen again at random, for the constants to have the value we need for life at random. And there's different examples for the four forces. There's about 25 different examples of this fine tuning. And most physicists agree, like this is really surprising, right? I mean, this really cries out for an explanation. What could it be? And so what I've written on, what a lot of people have written on, are well, what could you say? And there's lots of things you could say. Some of them are not very good. Some of them are better. But the theistic idea, the idea that the reason the universe seems to be fine-tuned for life, it's because it literally was, right? That it really was set up by a designer and tuned so that, we would have the universe is kind of like an aquarium in this regard. I've never had like a saltwater aquarium. I'm told, like for some fish, it's really delicate, right? Oxygen and the salt and the temperatures, all these things that if they're a little off, then like Nemo goes belly up, right? And it turns out the universe is kind of like an aquarium, and that there's a whole bunch of things that have to, in physics, that have to be just right for life to be possible.
Does the fine-tuning argument, how does it impact like theistic evolution or just evolution in general?
It's completely independent. This is actually kind of good, because evolution is going to be controversial. All right. This gets away from all that. This is pre-evolution. Like, for you to even have a planet where evolution might take place, all these constants have to be in play. So there are people that won't talk about any of the evolutionary stuff, the intelligent design, their heads will explode at that, but they got to take seriously, cosmological fine tuning, because this is just physics. It's completely independent of all the evolution controversies.
It kind of reminds me of, I think when I was probably like 23 or 24 years old, I was working at a coffee shop. And these two guys used to come in all the time that were, I think they were into astronomy. Like, they were always talking about, constellations and the science around that. And then they found out I was a Christian, and they were intent on convincing me that I was wrong on everything. And one of them gave me this book, and I still have it somewhere in here, but I think it was written by a physicist named Gunnell, I think. And so they're like, read this book and it'll definitely convince you about why you should abandon your faith. And read the book, did not understand literally 220 pages. I mean, I really was like, I don't understand this, but I'll never forget the last paragraph in the book essentially says something along the lines of like, now that we have firmly established the law of physics in existence, the question is, how did they get here? And I was like, I think this book just made me more of a Christian.
That's right.
Than before. So that's
actually historically, if we want to talk about and I write a lot on this. If you want to believe that there are laws of nature, obviously, very, very common view. It's really hard to do science without laws. Then, where did they come from? The first scientist. This is a relatively new idea. The notion of laws only comes up starting around the time of the scientific revolution. So, like the ancients, Aristotle didn't believe there were laws of nature. He believed that nature was orderly, but he wouldn't have attributed that order to laws. The notion of laws starts with people like Newton and Descartes and Boyle, again, people who start the scientific revolution, and they start talking about it in terms of the laws of nature. And all of them were Christians, right? They thought there were laws of nature because there is a lawgiver, that these all were just decided, literally just spoken into existence by God. That's where they come from. So, and then of course that takes off, right? That's a foundational idea in the scientific revolution, and everyone knew that was a completely theistic idea until the late 1800s, and then it kind of got co-opted away from us by people who called themselves scientific naturalists. And so you start learning about the laws of nature like in middle school, but no one ever brings up God. And you would ask Newton, like, could you believe in the laws of nature, without God? And he would just think that's just crazy. You can't have laws for the whole of the universe without God. They just, you can't get them. So that's